Okay, so we thought it would be kind of fun to show you how the CT17 was put together. And I'm going to put one together so you can see all the components, especially for some of our customers who like to take things apart. At least they'll know how to get it back together. This is the CT17 body. It is milled from a solid billet of stainless steel, 303. And as you can see, it's quite a bit of work. The little penny, for those of you who aren't familiar, is that this is a one-time run commemorative tool, and whenever we can, we like to put a penny in those tools just as a gesture of good luck. Anyway, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is put together the lead screw depth adjuster assembly, and that consists of these three components plus the necessary screw. And how I do that is this is a timed mechanism. These two halves have an index mark, and I need to make sure that they're pointing to the back of the plane, which I will do. First thing I'm going to do is insert a little screw, like so. There's my index mark. And then I'm going to get just a little bit of grease on that base, like so. And I'm going to insert just a small drop of Loctite into that threaded cavity. And because this is a tight fit, I'm going to use the Allen wrench as a way to help me insert that, and that goes down into the cavity, and I'm going to tighten that as tight as I can get it. Next thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of grease on the lead screw. This is 72 threads per inch. It's very fine. You probably can't even see how fine that is. And I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there. Also keep in mind that this mechanism is our index pin, and that has a porthole in the top. So about once a year you're going to want to put a drop of a thin lubricant in there, because this pivots, and that'll just help increase the longevity of the mechanism. Next thing I'm going to do is take the top of this split nut, put it on top, and I'm going to reach for two little screws. Put the two screws in. Like so. And put it right where it needs to be. And the important thing is to keep the nut parallel with the bottom half. And I want to get this so that it's loose, and then slowly, ever so slowly, tighten these until it snugs up. And this is a brand new mechanism, so maybe over the first month after you take delivery of your CT17, you may find you need to make some small adjustments. It really is a really small adjustment. The purpose of this cutout is so that when the plane's all together, you can actually get in here and tighten this. Okay, now that the depth adjuster is installed, I'm going to lay the plane on its side, and it's time to put the cap linkage together. We've already pre-assembled these two pieces just in the interest of time, but this should move freely. And this is a stepped pin assembly, the same as how we're going to assemble the linkage to the body. First thing I want to do is add just a little bit of grease to the inside of the pivots. Make sure that my step is oriented in the correct direction. Come back. Give this a little tap. And on its side. Seat that rivet. Come back and we'll clean the grease off. And this works just perfect. Next thing I want to do is insert the pressure pad. That's fairly straightforward. It's really important that this be able to pivot not only this way, but side to side. There's a ball joint on the end of this screw that self-aligns this pad with the iron when it's in the plane body. So we want that to be able to move. Next thing we're going to do is take the iron, and before we put it in, I like to add just a little bit of Tri-Flow or any thin film. This is a highly polished iron. It's an RMS finish 2 or better, which means that when you go to sharpen this, you do not need to lap the back of the iron. You want to deburr it with a leather strop. More than likely, if you hit this on a stone, you're going to have a finish that's not as fine as what we've already provided for you. Also notice too that on the back side we have a magnetic blade guard. This is absolutely imperative that you use this when you are sharpening, and the plane body is designed so that you can leave this on the iron at all times. So I'm just going to take this and drop it into the body, like so. Now I'm going to come down and set the pressure, and that is too tight. And now I have very little pressure. And this is the preferred way I like to open and close, is to set the plane flat, press down, and then with the butt of my hand put it in this hinge and then just pull up. That feels pretty good. It doesn't take much pressure to keep the iron seated in the plane body. And as you can see in a second, I'll show you what I mean by that. What we really want to do is have enough pressure so that the plane iron doesn't move left to right. And that feels really good. I'm going to go ahead and open that for right now. Next thing is to put in the throat plate. I also like to have just a little bit of Tri-Flow on that top surface. This is a bead blasted stainless steel, so the lubrication helps it slide a little better. And that should just slide nice and smooth. I'll wipe the excess oil off in a second. You want to be careful not to bang your throat plate into your iron. Set that down. This is the front tote assembly. We have a barrel nut, the front tote, the screw, and the washer. So what I'm going to do is set that washer like so. Take the barrel nut, insert it into the front tote. Take the screw, put it inside the barrel nut, and then come back with my screwdriver, or nut driver, hex key wrench actually. And this is how I like to adjust this. I like to tilt the tote all the way back just enough so I can still get my wrench in, and pull the wrench and see if I can get this to lock. When I unlock it, I should be able to slide the throat back and forth. And that is perfect because my finger is going to fall right in there when I use the plane. That feels great. So I've got the tote in. The next thing I want to do is check the depth for a real thin cut. I'm doing this just by feel. And although this has a lateral adjuster, and you can see that by moving this adjuster it will pivot, I actually found in use that I like to stick my fingers in these cutouts and do it this way. I can have a finer control. Whatever works. Now I'm going to close the throat down just by eye. That's pretty nice. You can see this is a piece of poplar. I have a knot. I picked a piece that had a knot in it because it's really nice to be able to go right over the top of a switchback grain and get a nice cut. Okay, what I have here is a body with the depth adjuster installed, and this is a little demonstration to show you how little pressure is required on a bevel up plane to get the iron to cut. It's my belief that most people, when they set up a block plane, they apply way too much pressure that stresses the body. In fact, it can actually distort the body. So what I'm going to do is take this iron, put it in the body, just eyeball it so that it looks like it's going to cut. That looks about right. And just using my finger, I'm going to be able to make full width shavings. And there you can see that just using my finger, whoops, that broke, but I was able to make a nice thin shaving. So you don't need a lot of pressure to hold the iron in place. What you need the pressure for is to keep the iron from moving side to side. And so when we set up the CT17, I'll show you how to do that. Okay, now that the plane is assembled, clean the fingerprints, This is the box. You insert the back of the plane first, push the nose down. To extract, pull the nose up and it comes right out. If you try to pull it straight up, you are going to hook the adjuster into the back and it's not going to work. For those of you, by the way, this is your 01 blade. They are marked. The A2 blade is in the plane when it arrives. This is the 01 blade. So you can experiment with whatever you like. And then for those of you who ordered the walnut box, you take the foam from the cardboard box and that fits in there, and then I would take the foam and the plane and insert into the walnut box. So in terms of care and cleaning, about once a year you're going to want to add a drop of oil in that lube port. You also have the ability to add a little bit of lubrication through the lube port in the top of the split nut. And then in terms of cosmetic appeal, if you find that you've got scratches in the side of the body, this is a grained surface. So what you want to do in that case is put down a piece of 400 or 320 grit sandpaper on a flat surface, take your plane, and then sand your scratch out. The bead blasted surfaces, you get a fingerprint on there, several of them. Rubbing alcohol will take those right off. That works great. In terms of polishing the top of the cap, unless you've scratched it, we wouldn't recommend you do anything but just clean it with a soft rag. Also keep in mind that your depth adjuster here is adjusted from the top, or the pressure pad is adjusted from the top. And again, we want just enough pressure to keep the iron from twisting side to side. It doesn't take much pressure at all, as I showed you earlier, in terms of getting the iron down. This needs to have plenty of slop for the plane to work correctly. And we're back in business. Just a little bit about this depth adjuster. This has 72 threads per inch, which means one full revolution of this rotator is going to move the blade about 14 thousandths of an inch. However, it's pitched at 12 degrees. So one full revolution increases your depth of cut by about 3 thousandths of an inch. So you have really, really fine control. Just moving, this is a base 10 adjuster. It has 5 fingers and 5 gaps. So by moving the finger to where the gap was, I've increased the depth by 3/10,000ths of an inch. 1/10 of 3 thousandths. So you have really fine depth adjustment. The process for removing the blade when you need to have it sharpened: loosen the front mouth, lock it, unlock the plane like so, turn the plane in your hand, and the iron should just pop out.